Hey, it's your girl Demetria Good with the Good Fight, and we chose to do something a little different for tonight's episode. We're going to run back a few replays, episodes that have run throughout our podcast, and hopefully one of these testimonies will touch you. And please come like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast. We are gearing because our nonprofit organization, The Good Fight, hosts Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast to continue to share life experiences and hopes that someone will connect so that they can start the journey to healing. We've had some amazing interviews, guests. We've had just so many amazing testimonies where so many folks have went through childhood traumas and it has affected them through their adulthood as well. There are some folks that haven't even been through childhood traumas, but they've had traumas in their adulthoods, but how they've navigated through these traumas and doing some wonderful things. And also there are some folks that are still coping with things that they have been through. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to run a few of our old snippets that were presented, and then hopefully you can go back and rewatch the episode. Maybe you will connect so that you can start the journey to healing, or you may know someone that is going through similar situations, and episode may be a beacon to helping someone navigate through their situation that they're currently going through, or maybe someone is going through a situation doesn't even realize it, and one of our guests will be able to help them navigate through their situations. We are not a psychologist. We are not a therapist. We are just sharing life experiences in hopes that someone will connect to start the journey to healing. So let's get right on into it.
I'm going to put some hot dogs on the stove. And I remember laying on a mattress in the basement. And as time went by, I felt, you know how you can feel the presence of someone standing near. And I felt someone standing near me, and I just squint my eyes and I saw this man standing over top of me. And he was unzipping in his pants. He was very abusive verbally, physical at times, emotionally, mentally. So it was like I was getting the mistreatment, the abuse from both sides. The only time that I was pretty active in school and doing great was when my grandmother was raising me. And I actually did a poem about him in my book. And what gets me is the fact that when we have family gatherings, he's there. Like, I don't understand. And some of these people just don't. I look at them like, how dare you even sit with this man and you aware of what he's doing? And that's the thing that gets me with people in society. Grab the basket up, and he had a gun in my back, and he raped me.
Did you say anything
At that moment? Oh
No, I'm
no, I
talking
was
about when you left. Did you say anything like
oh yeah,
after?
I pressed charges. I went to the hospital that night. The police was called immediately because he had the gun to my head the whole time. I had forgiven her, but it was after she passed away. So I had to work on things in that area, because you hear a lot of women and mothers going through, daughters and mothers having these issues, these type of relationships. And it's very strange to deal with this type of mistreatment from her when all I wanted her to do was love me, permission. I would say, first and foremost, God. I had to really allow God to do some work in my life. And secondly, I had to give myself permission. I had to forgive myself to start this healing journey. And knowing that I gave myself permission to heal.
Because we had the spokes on the bed with the thing coming up, because they were bunk beds. And I remember he made me put my hands through those. And he sat in the middle of my, on the middle of my back, and he beat the shit out of me. So I remember that. And I remember always being quiet as a child because I was afraid to speak a lot of times out of fear that he would beat me. And being a little boy at that time, you know, if I couldn't beat you, then that's a different story. Because then I respected you, but that didn't mean that I wasn't plotting on it. So coming up like that, you know, there's a lot of confusion. There was a lot of anger. I didn't want to go to school. I remember being in high school and throwing a desk across the classroom. When you look at a thing called ACEs, which is the Adverse Childhood Experiences, the four main principles, one of my partners, and, you know, dude was just disrespectful. And for some reason, he thought he was more than who he should have thought he was. And so they come up on Roosevelt, and the dude crack on my girl. And I'm like, yo, what? And so I'm walking. She sees me, and she's like, oh, my God. And when I get to him, I take off. And I mean, I beat shit out this nigga. Got put out of there for that, and the fact that I was drinking with somebody on the same side on the church steps. On the church steps, and the principal's office was right there. So when I laugh at that, I don't laugh because, you know, it's funny. I laugh because, man, how dumb was I? You know what I mean? It was like incredible. How stupid could you be, Slim? And that was a blown opportunity because I had some. I told him that night that when he was dropped off, I said, you're never going to snitch on us. And if I had what I needed at that night, wouldn't have nobody left nothing. I'd have came home by myself. But I didn't have what I needed. So therefore, that was the end result. And like I said, I got what I was looking for. When I came home, I was amazed that I only did 26 years. Because a lot of people be bullshit. When you go to jail, and especially now, they strip you. They strip you down. You got to stand naked in front of another grown ass man. Now, because of my crimes, you know, people was always leery. So I wasn't asked to do certain things like, you know, squat and cough. You know, that's one thing.
Anyway, so, you know, there was a lot of baggage that I carried, I guess, from this brokenness and of my family, the violence that unfolded. You know, when you look back, you think, was that week after week, day after day? I'm not quite sure if it was, but yeah, that was frightening. What have I given you? And I said to her, Mum, I say this with such love, and it's going to be hard to hear, but you've taught me how not to live. And that has been a very costly price that you have paid, but that I have really reaped the benefit of. And while our parents are actually treading water themselves, right? And it's not that they don't love us, but they're just not capable right now of caring for us. You know, they're in such a bad space themselves. It's like they're in this sinking sand, and they're fighting for their own life, you know, just like, oh. And so it helped me to poor choices. And I'm like, you should know better than this, you know? And I kept judging him, and I couldn't not stop judging him. And that's what possibly destroyed our relationship more than anything. I was just disappointed in somebody who was deeply faith, I guess, driven to look at marriage and the unity of my husband and I, that what can I choose to do that is actually going to enhance us and bring us together. And a lot of that is of humbling oneself and doing what I know, like he works long hours. So I got away from the girls' jobs and the boys' jobs. Like I said, Dad raised me a boy. So I'm like, know that you have choice. Choice is what will be your power source to moving on. And my go-to choice is every day having quiet meditation and hearing from the Lord each day.
That, I think, is the big part of what that meant for me. And I ended up rebelling completely against all of that. And when it comes to my own parenting, one of the biggest things that came out of my own healing was an ability to accept my children, their decisions, and where they were at in their life for their decisions, where they're at and what they need to learn. Apart from me, it actually doesn't have it called obstetric violence. So obstetric violence is any care provider who creates a situation where that woman is disempowered or undermined. So that could look like, an episiotomy being cut on a woman without consent. It could be not informing a woman fully of all of her choices. It could be coercion. Chances of creating a baby with or getting a baby in distress was higher, that my chances of needing to have pain relief was higher, that my chances of ending in a cesarean section, which is major surgery with a newborn, was higher. So I wasn't actually given full, there was no full disclosure, and it was pitched to me in a way, and this is how it works, the result of the obstetric staff that attended those births. In one case, it was just a midwife, and in another, it was an obstetrician. But when I birthed without that, I had no issues at all. So the problem with birth trauma is that it is often brought back to the woman as her being at fault, and then she doesn't trust herself because she couldn't birth her baby, so she doesn't trust herself in her parenting. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, but it looks like even just normal anxiety, depression, it can have a huge impact on the partner in the room, and so they'll often experience birth trauma, postnatal depression, those sorts of things. So postnatal depression is one of the big labels that's put on after birth, but often postnatal depression is actually misdiagnosed birth trauma because people aren't aware of what birth trauma looks like. So on my website, I actually have a tool for you to go through and look. The research is pretty clear. So in America, it's actually the second highest killer of women in the postnatal year. So over everything else. So, when we're talking about postnatal risks, which include infection and blood loss and things like that, so any risk associated post-birth, suicide is the second top killer of women in the States. In that
release, we came back through a prisoner swap of the two nephews of the regime, the president of Venezuela. So we were swapping a Caribbean island called San Vicente in Grenadine, and there was the swapping, movie style. You go to a plane, the other guys to the other plane, and I came back, and we came back under the protection of the U.S. government. We stayed in a military base in San Antonio, in a decompression program that they do for the prisoner of war, and well, after that, I was back. It was maybe in 2020 when the pandemic began. In 2021, 1 year after, I suffered a heart attack, and I fainted, and I stayed 3 days in coma. I was transferred to a very famous hospital in Caracas called the Hospital de Clínicas Caracas, the most famous hospital in Caracas. I was transferred there because by that time the negotiations were going on, and this guy was scared that I could die, because if I died, the negotiation failed. So I was going outside. I didn't have fresh air. There was so it was really, really extreme situation. I was sweating all the day. I literally breathing, my own breath. I had pneumonia. I began to have bronchitis. I began to suffer scabies. I began to suffer scabies all over my skin. UN has a commission called the Arbitrary Detention Commission. Those guys flew to Caracas, and those guys begin to pressure the government to give us some better treatment, and they decided to allow us to our family bring food because they didn't have food. So my family, my eldest son, flew to Colombia. He moved to Colombia, and he began to buy food every week and send it to me. And somebody in Venezuela, they arranged with that person to cook and send me the food. Many other countries doing it. This is something called the hostage diplomacy. It's a very sophisticated way to do diplomacy. That is, they take normal people with maybe some high profile, and they take it and they leverage to negotiate whatever they want. So it becomes a real evil practice that many countries like Venezuela, Russia, Iran, China, Afghanistan, Myanmar, North Korea, a lot of countries are applying. There are a lot of states, they commit crimes against humanity. They have hundreds of political prisoners that were with me. So this crystal clear. There is no line division between the crime and the government. These guys are criminals.
And that was the day that my son passed away. And that is the biggest obstacle that I had to face in my life, because no one expects to bury their child. We expect that our children are going to bury us. So that was my first traumatic experience, which a month after that was his first birthday in heaven. And I'm thinking that as I poured the bottle of pills into my hand, I heard a small voice say, if you do it, you'll never see him again. And that's when I put the pills away, and I decided that somehow I had to not just survive, but give myself permission to live again. Your child die and see if you think it's such a good place to be. Let me change places with your child. But I never verbalized those things. I just thought those things. And so I was silently dying inside until I went to therapy and went through the 5 stages of grief. And when I finally got to the acceptance phase, I knew high blood pressure. And the night that I had my stroke, I just had a little funny feeling in my head. And then all my body functions were acting funny. But pay attention to your body. I was such a workaholic. The nursing home that I was in was terrible, and I could speak for myself. My family was calling up there, and it made me think about the people there that were voiceless, that they needed somebody to be their voice. So now I want to be an advocate for the elderly and those in a nursing home. That people think that they're doing their job and they're not. You can live depressed and upset every day. It's like I'm a part of a lot of stroke groups, and a lot of them have given up and feel that there's no hope, and they blame God for it, because it is a change, and it's how you look at it, because it's a change not being able to take care of yourself. It's a change that summer is coming now.
To all sorts of diseases. So she required a bone marrow transplant. So as soon as she was born, they took her away and they kept her at San Francisco, UCSF San Francisco, which is a fantastic place for bone marrow transplants. And it turns out that I was the direct match for her instead of the sibling, my other daughter, which is rare that it's the one of the parents is the direct match, but I was the direct match. So she went through that. Everything turned out great. I mean, God was good. So put it in the first responder culture, which is the police, firemen, paramedics. I'm going to throw in medical doctors and nurses for emergency rooms. I'm going to lump it all in there. You have to have this warrior mentality, right? You have to be strong. You have to be able to compartmentalize the issues that are going on around you and do your job. You can't see a broken a child that has just been in a traffic accident and have their legs broken and they're crying. I think the difference with me was that I was high ranking. I was equal to a lieutenant, and I ran a multi-jurisdictional narcotic task force, and I really tarnished the badge, right? I mean, all my stuff was in the news constantly, and because of my rank and because of the power that I did have, it really was abuse of power. How'd your day go? Oh, fine, no problem. But I just interviewed a 4-year-old that was telling me how her uncle raped her. I can't tell her that. I mean, how am I going to do that? Then it's going to bring her down too. So you keep these things bottled up. And then, I would wake up at 3, 4 in the morning, crying my eyes out, and go downstairs and cry my eyes out, and then go back to bed. And I'm not trying to whine and snivel about this. I'm just telling you the pitfalls of this first responder culture. And this happens across the board with firemen and doctors and all those professions also. Culture, and I'm going to put it in the first responder culture, which is the police, firemen, paramedics. I'm going to throw in medical doctors and nurses for emergency rooms. I'm going to lump it all in there. You have to have this warrior mentality, right? You have to be strong. You have to be able to compartmentalize the issues that are going on around you and do your job. You can't see a broken a child that has just been in a traffic accident and have their legs broken and they're crying. You can't just sit there and cry with them. You have to go on and do your job. And if you don't do your job, then you're labeled as
not going back to the 11-year-old Delicia. It's really hard for me to try to keep her in her place, so to speak, because I just don't know. I just really don't know how to be sometimes, because I was never really given an opportunity as a child to at least have my first experience of witnessing what I'm supposed to be, and always defended my mom. My sister and I always defended my mom. For some reason, my dad was very angry about certain things, very unhappy about certain things. And he would come home and take it out on my mom. Don't really know the reason why. A lot of, yelling, screaming, a lot of bumps in the walls. And so first thing, emotionally, I don't feel that I had the emotional support of a dad. I go through, and I don't have my dad there for me to talk me through things. But I see he's always with my brother a lot. So they have a really close relationship. But me and my sister, we probably, I can't speak for her, but I know for me, we don't have that much of a relationship because I've always been in DC. He was robbed and shot at the bus stop. So I was forced to be a widow at a very early age. So that's very tragic for me. But I knew that survived for a reason. So I must say my family has a strong faith. So they did help me get through that. That he had to go through, and he was there for the purpose, and he wasn't bad with me. He wasn't abusive with me. He just grew out of love with me when I had a stroke. He wasn't a fan of the whole sickness and health thing. Before that, I had women use me, financially mostly. Women are can be interesting about money. So I've had a lot of women use me in that way. But one thing, why do we do what we do? And then once you get to that conclusion, just follow the process. And it's going to be scary and it's going to be hard and you're going to feel lonely, but God always is going to be there. And I was put in a position that I had nothing to rely on but God. And I know that because I had to, being abandoned in that situation. So I just encourage everybody to just
trying to think how to do this without telling too much of someone else's story. Like in my house, like there was a lot of emotional instability, and it never crossed. I shouldn't say never. It did not in general cross over to physical abuse, but it was serious emotional volatility. For me, most of it started to like show when I was like 4 to 6, so young. When I was 4, I mean, I just kind of knew that like my life wasn't worth anything. So I'm going to try and like serve other people. And I tried to enlist in the National Guard when I was 4 because I saw the TV commercial. I'm like, I'm going to be a soldier and help people and die on the battlefield and like live a good.
He let that go. He's just like my favorite person ever. And I respect him so much. And like he brought into my life the reality and the authenticity and the vulnerability that I had not seen before and was desperately craving, but had no idea how to like even approach. But yeah, I mean, so that's always been there, and I could always see stress go up and then him kind of shut down. But of course I didn't experience that. So my solution was to like talk it out. And that was not help. So yeah, I think now he's done so much work that like he's not in that place all the time of just that like hyper depressed, hyper anxious, ADHD stress.
I've seen so much about her that tells me that she would not be the problem. I know that I've got a bunch of internal stuff that is wrong. So like, let's talk about that before we like
sever the relationship.
Right? Because all this is going to come out with some other person. Like she was never the problem to me. I was definitely everything.
I was part of the dynamic.
Sure. But because this sucks and like it's uncomfortable and I don't like it and fuck it, I'm going camping. So I'm going camping, or it's like I'm gonna have a snack.
Take that.
Deal with that. Yeah.
I'm like, yes, go have.
Go! Right here. Yeah,
on October 1st of 2017, I was attending the Route 91 Music Festival out here in Las Vegas when a gunman opened fire on the crowd from the Mandalay Bay Resort Hotel. And as a result, 58 people died from that night. And then sad, and that became a very emotionally abusive situation in which there was a lot of name calling, there was lack of communication, there was lots of affairs had by him, and me just taking him back constantly because I didn't want my kids to grow up in a broken home. My parents have been married for 48 years until my dad died this past year. Underneath a table in a bar section until there was a break and fire. And then after that, I ran again and the shooting began again. And at that point, I felt a pop in my leg. And I had noticed that there was blood dripping. So if there's a big crowd, I'm usually very, I stick to myself, especially in large crowds, because I rather observe. But 4th of July is hard for me, right? Like, as long as I see the fireworks, I'm fine. If I don't see them, I am a mess. Like last summer, if there's a big crowd, I'm usually very, I stick to myself, especially in large crowds, because I rather observe. But 4th of July is hard for me, right? Like as long as I see the fireworks, I'm fine. If I don't see them, I am a mess. Like I didn't use painkillers at all. I medicated with whiskey for 3 months. I learned how to make a really good old fashioned.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, did people notice that change when you started drinking?
No, I mean, I think the people I was hanging around were doing the same thing because they had all been there too. So we just all leaned on each other and just tended to basically partying, you know.
And speaking of work,
way your household is, then this is the way it is, right? And you've just got to get on with it. So having normalized some very strange behaviors, I then grew into quite an angry, misguided, and emotionally inept young man. Not that I was particularly aware of it, if you understand, because more often than not, we're not. When we have a mental illness, it's not always that obvious to us that we have it. Of course, it's obvious to other people around us that there's something that actually someone's death can be the best thing that happens to you in a way. And actually this was, although it wasn't at that time. So with her dying, I had an awful lot of shame and regret to deal with, and a lot of unspoken things, obviously from my perspective and from her perspective. So I got to the point where I had a bottle of gin inside me, a load of narcotics, and I cleaned a double barrel shotgun, and then I loaded the shotgun and I put it down on the floor in front of me, and I pointed the barrel. I remember being a small kid, and my mum was threatening to throw herself out the bedroom window, and my dad didn't know what to do. And he and my younger brother and I said, well, look, we'll try to restrain her. So he let us restrain her. So we basically tried to get her down and we very mentally disturbed young children with a mentally disturbed mum. I remember being a small. I throughout my adult life, I slept with hundreds of women, and many of whom I could not remember. Or even name now, and I don't say that with any modicum of pride. There's no pride whatsoever. There's just authentic accountability for it. So all of this behavior and the self-harm that came with it, anything that's out of bounds. And I said, nothing is out of bounds. I am now 100% authentic and vulnerable, and accepting for who I have been. But you mustn't do anything. These things tie us down into a very energetically draining system very early on, where we're left wanting. And as the Buddha said, attachment is the root of all suffering. And what he meant by that is, if we are clinging to something,
he was interested. It was like, oh, okay, so. It didn't draw any red flags then. Like now looking back at it, I'm like, what in the world was he doing? And he had a tendency, all the women that he cheated on me with were actually young also. So that was kind of like the more I would be away from him, and then I would grow away from him. But it was just something about it that the minute he would get out or the minute he would call, all those old feelings would come back, because as I had told you guys, I didn't have high self-esteem at that point. And so I wasn't dating, and I wasn't, entertaining different men and doing those things. So when he would get back out, it'd be like, okay, we're going to do right, because he had said everything that he needed to say. The first one I was able, yes. He had a child that was born 10 days after my child was born. And so the first one, we connected because he knew how bad I wanted a baby. And so when he was supposed to have him, he would bring him to me and I would keep him. So when he initially told me, I was like, he's like, but you was in Nebraska and this and that happened. We were all living together. So it was my son and his son. So our sons, and then it was me and him. And when we broke up that last time and he left, he took him from me and he said, you ain't his mama, no way. And that hurt me very, very deep because I had been there for this young man since he was born. Like when he was teething, I was there. When he was needing to go to the doctor, I was there. When he was everything that he needed, I had been like a fool while he doing A, B, and C. But nobody says, I'm going to help you get out. I'm going to help you figure out what your next move is. And so you start to feel like you're all by yourself. And for somebody who's never been by themselves, like that's even scarier than being in a relationship with somebody who doesn't really love you.
Okay, that was a powerful message right there.
I'm going to mess it up. So I need to make sure that I'm right before he comes so that I know that when he do come, that everything is going to be okay. And really, like, I have to focus on my son right now. I feel like I spend so much time not focusing on him that I can't bring a man into the situation right now because then my focus got to be on my son and the man. And for once, I need to focus on what I know loves me. And I know my baby loves me. And I don't.
I made a right going up this hill, and then that's when I don't even remember, but I was told that that's when the shots was fired. It was multiple gunshot. It was multiple shells. It was 3 different shell cases out there, so it was more than one shooter. So it was more than 2 shooters. So I was hit with one of the bullets that came through my back windshield before entering my headrest, before entering the top crown of my head. So yeah, and then I remember, so I stayed in a semi-coma for 5 days. I woke up on Mother's Day. I got shot on May 8th. It was a Tuesday, May 8th, and I woke up 5 days later on Mother's Day. So that's why this past Mother's Day was special for me, because not only did I celebrate my first Mother's Day, blessed and thankful that I'm not as bad off as my other fellow brain injury survivors, because there is a lot of people that are like that they can't comprehend, that like have aphasia, and with aphasia that you can't understand what the person is saying. Like, you know what I'm saying? How can a person say a sentence and then or say a prayer, talk to you, have a conversation, and you not understanding what they're saying? Like, that to me would be devastating. So I'm glad I have 90, well, no, not 95%. I wish. Like 85% of my brain functioning, even when you're in the struggle, in the mix of the thickness, and like you don't see no way out. Speak positive. You know what I'm saying? Speak positive in your life. I'm telling you, I've been there, I've done that. You know what I'm saying? I've been through everything that you can imagine. Well, not you can imagine, but I've been through all the hurt and depression and the loneliness and the what I'm saying, on the brink of suicide, to the point where I've swallowed some pills. You know what I'm saying? But God has.
One of the reasons why she wanted to highlight that was just the professional repercussion. Like, she denied having issues because she was afraid of professional repercussion. And what that professional repercussion is really a big question. It's a big unknown, right?
Awareness of, this particular situation.
Sure. I remember it was a normal day. We had, I had just seen her at my son's first birthday party. She was happy. She was happy. She was the happiest I'd seen her in a long time. Not to say she wasn't a happy person. She was on the outside. I mean, she made being on call at 3 a.m. in the morning look fabulous. I cried because I was relieved. The hope is that, by changing these questions to having just one question saying, do you have X, Y, and Z, and does it impair your ability to practice medicine? Hopefully that would be a step in the right direction to decrease those barriers to physicians or other healthcare professionals seeking. yeah, the hurt doesn't go away. The loss doesn't go away. I sympathize with the hurt she must have been going through, or anybody would go through. I was starting to have nightmares regarding the suicide. I never saw anything, but it was just, I don't want to say my subconscious, and the fact that the socializing is because something was an emergency and that fell on our plate. Or don't yell at us. Don't yell at us. Don't threaten us with violence. Because we're humans too. We're somebody's spouse, daughter, son. So just look at us as humans. We're not gods. We're not demigods. We're not superheroes. We're doing the best we can in a very broken system, trying to deliver patient care the best we can.
Family environment, I would feel they'd, still as an adult, they do still raise their voice when they talk to each other, which now I've worked through that's theirs, not mine. Although before it was very interesting because I'd be like, even as an adult. So, I've gone through some, healing around that of what is that. And I just realized that that's how they communicate with each other, and that's what their learned behavior has been. But then afterwards, I doubted for such a long time. Did I say it out? Say it firmly enough? Did I say it loud? There was always that doubt of what part of that. I blamed myself for such a long time. I shouldn't have been drinking. I shouldn't have put myself in that situation. He was a friend. There was just so much, around that situation that really did impact my life, and my business has impacted your life, and it's these things that do shape and dirty and gross, and but I knew that's what you do as a partner. You got to but I tried to stretch it out as far as possible. If you ever touch me, I always felt that it's going to lead to that, so I just I try and stay away from being touched and, having that intimacy or anything like that, because I just didn't want to go that next step, So yeah, that kind of was that kind of stage, which was a big, we were still friends. So, but it didn't fix that problem that had already, that pain and hurt and trauma that was already there, because he didn't even know about that and how that affected me, because I didn't talk about it also. And it's, even though I know he wasn't doing, necessarily doing it maliciously, I just kept going back to try and fix. It was like I was fixing, like trying to fix what was broke. I don't even know how I can explain how, I just didn't feel connected, and we weren't in love. I wasn't in love. I know that. I wasn't in love. I loved him, but I wasn't in love because I didn't really know what that was, to be honest. And I kept blaming myself that there was, that I didn't want to do it and there was something wrong with me. And, I'd make excuses, I think, for not wanting to get some, and, it just was a real journey of, just trying to get my body into a shape that I, would like. And even when I was, lean and slim and whatever, I then look in the mirror and still have critical views on myself, and, which I found really fascinating. People, and I found, and I think this was because of the incident I had, I would find that
Oops, I'm sorry, I was on mute. We want to thank you for tuning in to replays on Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast, and wait for our all new episode coming up on Monday as we continue to share life experiences and hopes that someone will connect to start the journey to healing. And make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast. Help us get there. Help us get our numbers. We are doing some wonderful things in the community. So check out some of our work on www.thegoodfight.org. There's an E on the in the good. I'm going to run it across the screen at the bottom real quick so that you have our information. We are giving back to communities, men, women, and youth, specifically our youth. We share all life traumas. Our specific area of focus is domestic violence, but we share all life traumas because you never know what someone has been through. And we want to thank you for supporting The Good Fight. And if you like to be a guest, please email us. We would love to have you on. You have a blessed day, and we will continue to share life experiences. Peace.